Relentless resilience refers to the capability to persistently and unwaveringly bounce back and adapt and recover from significant trauma, loss, adversity, or stress without losing pace or determination. It's the continuous and active process of bouncing back and pushing forward, viewing challenges as opportunities for growth and improvement rather than viewing them as roadblocks. And it appears that the American public is taking heed to that very motto. Many Americans, according to MSN and YouGov, are focused on personal improvement and growth in 2026, with around 31% of Americans saying that they're excited to prioritize better exercise, saving money, and their health, alongside 49% that say that they're optimistic and focused on resilience, despite the economic and societal issues that they'll face in 2026, leading the mantle of a renewed resilient spirit are Gen Zs and Millennials, leading that respective charge. YouGov also says that 49% of Americans report that they believe that this coming year in 2026 will be their year, despite facing increased stresses from a year ago at 48%. For my friend Josh McConkey, this emergency room physician is focused on resilience in so many different ways. He's known nationwide as the MacGyver Doc. He's been a combat deployed MEDEVAC commander and emergency room physician who built his reputation on solving the unsolvable and some of the most unforgiving environments on Earth, from the battlefield machine in Iraq to high-stakes emergencies here at home. He's the leader people turn to when chaos requires clarity, courage, and creativity. He's also a Pulitzer Prize-nominated author and a 2025 Telly Award winner. He blends real-world grit with heart-driven purpose through his books. Be the weight behind the spear and the heart of a leader. His mission is simple: to rebuild resilience and restore authentic leadership and empower the next generation of leaders with the character and confidence that our world and democracy desperately needs. And he joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Welcome to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you this morning all about medicine, leadership, and service, my friend. Great to see you, and happy Monday to you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Now, Josh, I know that you're on a mission to both rebuild confidence and restore character in the next generation, and this generation of Americans, because you believe that confidence and character or something that needs to be at the forefront of society. And I'm wondering why you feel that way and why you hold that belief, my friend.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So, my personal leadership ethos: be the weight behind the spear. As a military commander, as an author, it's the title of my first book, and that "be the weight behind the spear" is just about people engaging in their community and building up our future leaders. As an emergency doctor, what I've seen over the past several years, there's just an entire generation. I call them the COVID generations. They're really the last half of Gen Z that were shut out of schools, shut out of churches, just during some very critical times in their development. And as a result, there's a very large mental health crisis that's just consuming that entire generation. That's what I see every day as an emergency doctor. I see the anxiety, the depression, and the suicides. And as a military commander, I saw those same groups of kids. You get like these 20, 25-year-old kids, and there's just no resiliency skills, just those basics of leadership and accountability. They just aren't there. And so I'm on that mission to get people to engage their communities, whatever it takes, books, podcasts, TV shows. So I appreciate you letting me get this message out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, I know that you're known as the MacGyver Doc, and as you mentioned, you're a combat deployed medevac and a commander and an emergency room physician. So I know that you built your reputation on being able to solve the unsolvable in some of our most treacherous environments, my friend. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about what you learned about service and serving other people and the importance of the work that you did in medicine on the battlefields, my friend. So how did your time in the service and your medical background sort of influence the person and the work that you do today, my friend?
Well, I've been super blessed that I've been able to put those two together. I grew up in a really small town. Like my dad was a railroader, my grandfather and my great grandfather were railroaders. So I just grew up in a small rural town, lots of cows in a railroad town. And I just could not be contained. I was always kind of an adrenaline junkie. And so I found emergency medicine where it's always high pressure situations, like literally life and death decisions uh, on a daily basis, if not like every hour or by the minute. And just learning how to be comfortable with chaos, being very comfortable with the uncomfortable. And then when I found myself in combat, I'd already dealt with a lot of life and death decisions. Now, I will tell you, it is much, much different when it's your own life at stake. So I think my first mortar attack, my first air assault that I was part of, incredibly scary, very high pressure. And once you learn to really thrive and focus on what matters, and for me, like just like family, community, developing our future leaders, those things I'm very passionate about. When you have something that you believe in, like nothing can deter you. So whether it's gunshots, mortars, snipers, craziness in the emergency department, I've just been able and just been very fortunate and been given gifts to thrive in high pressure situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, I'm also curious to ask you, what do you think America is suffering from a lack of courageous leadership? Now, you've seen leadership both on the battlefield and here at home, and I'm wondering from a societal perspective in America. Well, when we turn on the news, it seems to be people want news today to fit their what I call a territorial narrative. If you believe in one thing, you tend to want news programming that will feed into that narrative. And I'm curious to ask you, what do you think America is losing their ability to sort of formulate, courageous leaders that are built on both confidence and conviction and their own sort of intellectual reasoning, my friend. I'm wondering if you think America is suffering from a lack of courageous leadership. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So, gosh, 23 years of military. Gosh, it's getting close to 24 now. Wow. I think my retirement and readiness retirement year actually changes over here on the 17th. So we're close to 24 years for me. And I've seen great leadership. I've seen horrific leadership. I think what you see, like just in America right now, is the media makes money by pitting us against each other. So they make everyone choose a side. Everything has a narrative. Instead of just reporting the news and letting people make some common sense assertions of what's going on, everything is coming at you from a narrative. Whether it's spun to the left or spun to the right, it's created a tribal culture and it just pits everyone off each other. And I mean, it's all about sound clips, sound bites in the media. I mean, they only make money if we're fighting each other, apparently. So I think that's a large part of that. But as we get people back into the fold and start to really like recruit this younger generation, like I've talked about, that COVID generation that has really been out there struggling, the mental health crisis issues. I want people to know that, those really, pillars of leadership, accountability, taking ownership of your own situation. I've learned a lot of those skills in the military, and we're bringing that to America right now. And we're trying to get that message out there that what you do every single day matters. Leadership matters. Bringing a positive culture and a climate to part of organizations that you're in. Like I've been very fortunate to find that in the military and with business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Josh, I'm also curious. You brought up the COVID generation a couple of times. So I'm curious, what do you think you learned about the importance of meeting people where they are and, diverse leadership styles through the COVID pandemic? And how do you think we've emerged as a leadership generation after COVID? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So, really the, the mental health issues and the things from COVID just they were really raised those really critical years that it's always awkward growing up, right? I mean, those early teen years, teenager years, just where do you fit in? Who are you as a person? And just being around your friends and colleagues and having some type of just strength, whether it's your faith, whether it's your friends, whether it's your family, they really feel like that was taken from them. So when they've done polls in this COVID generation, like over half of them just feel that they really don't have a tie to society around them, and they have a big mistrust of their government as well because of some of those decisions. So the things that we try to get them a part of, I was very fortunate. I was a professor at Duke University, and I had a great leadership lecture from Coach K. So Coach Krzyzewski, he was the Duke basketball coach, just legendary leadership. And he talked about really just the things that have been a huge part of his leadership style. He talked about ownership, accountability, standards, not rules, because nobody really likes rules, but you talk about standards and holding people to higher standards, and then how to empower your people and not micromanage. So really those things right there is what we need to focus on, teaching some of those basics. Those are some of the things I talked about in my book as well, that it's done very well. But if we can get that message across to that generation, that and that ownership part is like, you matter. Like, we need you. We need you as a part of this organization. And if they don't feel that ownership, if they don't feel a part of that team, they just bail. So that's part of the resiliency, where if they encounter obstacles or they really don't feel part of that team, they just walk and they bail so quickly. I've seen it in the military as well. So you just focus on those things. I think the number one being just ownership, part of the team. And if you can develop that type of culture, they're going to be much, much more successful, and they'll be better leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Josh is in an emergency room, a physician. You see chaos through clarity all the time, my friend. So I'm curious, what does that mean to you? How do you personally define chaos through clarity, and what drives you to sort of define your own level of creativity and clarity through chaos, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
So for me, everyone is just really a combination of the people that they've been around, like the people that raised them. When I talk about that weight behind the spear, your teachers, your coaches, like family, volunteers, like all like teammates, all of those have had a huge part to play in who you are. And as an emergency physician and a military commander, the probably the biggest experience for me was watching men and women like give their lives and just sacrifice themselves for their colleagues. And then whether like the politics of war is always messy and nasty, but for the soldier that's there, for the men and women that are serving, you're there for the person next to you. And when you watch them die, like I've carried body bags off battlefields and helicopters, and those things just shape you. I've seen those sacrifices, and so I wake up every single morning. That's what I think about, and I have to make those sacrifices worth it. So those things that's what I think about every day. My family, how lucky I am. I didn't have kids when I was in Iraq. I literally thought I was going to die of failure. That one air assault mission where I was just waiting to get blasted out of the sky. They had shot down 7 helicopters in 2 weeks. They killed a flight surgeon 2 weeks before I got there. I was pretty sure I was going to be the next one. And but without having children, I basically looked at myself as a biologic failure. I'm a biologist, genetics. I gave nothing to mankind, like no genetic progeny. And I just feel so blessed to be in this situation, and I have to make those sacrifices worth it. So that's what motivates me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Josh, I also know that you talk to organizations about culture and building culture. So I'm curious to get your thoughts here on this Gallup study that was released last year that said only 2 in 10 American employees believe that their company culture is connected to their values, my friend, but only 40% of company executives agree that their company culture is connected to the values that their employees hold, my friend. So how do you think we can bridge the connection of building company culture where employees really feel valued? Because I believe that building a strong organizational culture starts with the people. So I'm curious, what do you think when you hear these findings from Gallup, and how can we build a strong organizational culture, my friend?
Yeah, boy, isn't that just shocking numbers? When you look at that, I got a chance to read. Less than 1/4 of people like really feel a part of that organizational culture, and even the leaders who should be like leading from the front and really making this a priority, less than half of them. So, when you look at all the different, you look at success, like what has been successful in the past, we need to get back to some of those basics. Everyone's on Zoom now. I mean, so many people don't even want to go into the office anymore. You have to have those face-to-face interactions. We have to get back to what has made us humans and humanity for thousands of years. It's about storytelling and interactions and relationships. Video screens are great. It allows us to be a little bit more efficient, but that's not who we are as people. So just getting face-to-face interactions again, and that's why, when I talk about that in the book, go coach Little League or soccer or volunteer in your school or your church or even go into the animal shelter. And those animals can be emotional support animals for somebody. So just face-to-face interactions, and then getting back to Coach K's fundamentals of building a culture, right? It has to be part of the ownership. They have to feel like they're part of the team, that their input matters. It really starts with respect. And for me as a military commander, I hold everyone to the same standard. Not that people don't like the rules, but when you talk about standards, I came into a squadron. There were 2 senior lieutenant colonels that had been there forever doing nothing. I had that conversation. Hey, I need you guys to step up. And when you set the tone and you send 2 like senior level executives packing out the door, everyone else underneath, like, whoa, this guy's serious. And it starts with yourself as well. You hold yourself accountable. So just those basics of just ownership, accountability, and then I empower people to make decisions. So, I pride myself. I'm not a genius, but I do know how to pick good people. And when you allow them to make decisions, don't micromanage. So if you have to micromanage your staff, you made a bad decision, All right. You either have to coach that person up, mentor them more, or you have to bite the bullet. You made a bad call and you got to find somebody else. But you own that as a leader. If you focus on those things, you'll really get a much better grip on your culture.
Yeah, and Josh, I'm wondering if you think leaders have to be more empathetic to be more relatable. And what are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, and that's part of respect. You know, you just being now that's always tricky as a senior leader. You're not there to be everybody's best friend, right? But being empathetic and talking with them and being part of that and being part of that culture, getting out there after work events, sitting down and talking with them. I kept an open door. Whether you were a private or a major or a lieutenant colonel, I always had an open door. Just chat. Let me know about who you are, your family. As a military commander, you really the responsibilities. It's so much more than just a CEO. A really CEO manages like the organization and the business side of it. And very rarely do you see CEOs really get involved in the kind of family issues and personal issues. As a commander, that's really part of your military readiness. And so you're more than just a CEO. But I mean, divorces, loss of a child. I had one individual that was involved in a road rage incident and shot somebody in Washington, D.C., and all the legal ramifications and just walking them through that process. So you just deal with so much more. But, that empathy, letting them know that you care. I mean, you are a real person, and that goes a long way. And when they trust you and they know that you have their best interests at heart and that you really care, man, it just makes for a much better team.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, I'm also curious to ask you, whether you think effective leadership is connected to, being resilient and how that's, connected in that space. What do you think it means to be a battle-tested leader, my friend?
Being able to, I mean, just being comfortable with that chaos. I mean, life is going to throw crazy things at you, and everybody has a breaking point. So, part of what I see a lot in mental health, and I see suicides and the anxiety, depression. You see when people reach that point, I mean, everyone has a breaking point. Now, when I talk special operations, I've been medical director for special operations, and these are like the toughest mentally and physically individuals on planet Earth. They still have suicides in their population. So it doesn't matter how tough you are or how strong you are, recognizing that there is a breaking point is like super important. And building the resiliency is, respect, trusting. They know that you trust them, and you put them in situations when you start that that they're going to know the answers to, when they're going to be successful. As they get higher up in leadership, it gets a little bit more stressful and a little crazier. But if you allow them to make decisions, don't micromanage, you allow them to make some mistakes, because that's how people learn. I think the problem that you'll see that contributes to our current mental health crisis is what I call lawnmower parenting. So these parents right now, they do not let their kids make mistakes. They want to mow down every single obstacle in their kid's path. And so as a result, the kids don't know what to do when they encounter an obstacle. They just quit. They don't have that resiliency. So, just let people like fail safely. Yeah, you're always there for the guardrails. Don't let them make the dangerous decisions and mistakes. But that's how they learn. They do it safely. And when they build up that confidence and know that you still have their back, they become more resilient. And that's just better for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, because I'm personally curious, I'm going to ask you this next question. So, Josh, I was born with a cerebral palsy, and at the age of 9, I was told that I would never walk without assistance because of the severity of my disability. And then at 22, when I graduated college, I graduated originally with a sports journalism degree, Josh, but when I graduated college about 15 years ago, I went on consecutive job interviews and I was denied a job, not because I wasn't qualified, but because of my disability. And I've made it my mission as a speaker to talk to organizations about the importance of diversifying their workforces with people with disabilities. So I'm curious to ask you, from a competitive advantage standpoint, why do you think it's important to infuse people with disabilities into the workforce? And what would be your message to organizational leaders who may be hesitant to do that, my friend? Fred, what are your thoughts there?
I think you're probably that best example out there. The things that you've had to overcome have made you so much more resilient than most people. That's that special operations mentality that I just love. Adapt and overcome. Like nothing stops you. So you do like 15 plus job interviews. You keep going. You've basically started your own business, your own brand. Your show is doing fantastic. That's why I'm on the show here. I was really impressed with what you're doing, and I think most leaders can recognize that. If you've got leaders that don't recognize that, that's not an organization you probably want to be a part of. So, that resiliency, that ability to adapt and overcome makes an organization stronger, and you're a great example of that.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I'm wondering your philosophy on both giving back, because I know after you won the North Carolina Education Lottery Money, you decided to give your winnings to launch the Weight Behind the Spear, which is your foundation, which empowers communities, my friend, to build resilience and hope within their own communities, my friend. So give me your thoughts on giving back and how it's related to resilience and hope, my friend. What are your thoughts then?
Yeah, so that lottery win was just a tremendous blessing. I came from nothing. Like I said, my dad's a railroader, and that money for me, when you really recognize, when you stare death in the face. I've seen people die about every way you can imagine in emergency rooms and combat zones, and didn't think I was going to survive myself. So I probably have a much different outlook and goals than most people. Like I literally feel like I survived so I can make a difference and make the sacrifices for those men and women worth it. So I'm driven probably a lot differently than a lot of people. But when I got that money, that was the first thing I thought of, is like, what can we do with this to make a difference? It allowed me, when I wrote the book, to able to get that message out, to start the nonprofit organization, the Weight Behind the Spear Foundation. I started that right after Hurricane Helene here. Western North Carolina was just destroyed with biblical level flooding in September of 2024. And so we were able to start that organization, partner with some other organizations, Samaritan's Purse and some other ones that have just been able to help with the rebuilding and help with communities, and just pushing that whole message of what you do matters. Like, to the people around you, your family, your coworkers, your friends. People really feel, when you stressed, and they just, do I really matter? Am I part of anything? And that's where you see the mental health stuff start to creep in. So the more we can solidify, their buy into their own communities and their businesses, it makes everyone better.
Yeah, and Josh, I'm also curious to ask you about leadership versus fear in this context, because a lot of leaders are risk averse and they aren't sort of intentionally motivated to take action in life. So I'm wondering if you think leaders are more risk averse today, and whether they suffer from a lack of intentional action, and how can we make our next generation of leaders more assertive, in your view? What are your thoughts then?
So I think that's a great way, when you kind of take one thought to really discern types of leadership. Why are they leaders? Are they there in their own self-interests? I've seen, the leaders that I see in the military, they're always trying to toot their own horn. They're trying to get that promotion. The successful leaders that I've seen are taking care of those people around them. Like, I'm blessed to be in a position to make everyone else around me successful. And that is really my definition of success, is how many kids can I get into medical school? How many, like, younger enlisted people are we getting into college, and just helping grow in their careers? So it just, those types of things were really, that's what you see. They're like, and what was the first part of the question? I was so excited about it. What the first thing you're talking about in there?
Yeah, I wanted to know whether you think leaders are suffering from intentional
Yeah, the risk
action.
aversion.
Yeah,
Yeah. So fear itself is a fantastic motivator. All
yeah.
right. So if you are not pushing yourself hard enough to fail at something, then you're playing it too conservative. You're not innovating. You're not changing anything. If you're not pushing yourself to failure, don't be afraid of failure. And when you see those leaders that are really afraid of failure, it's because they're probably promoting themselves. They're probably not doing things for the right reason. When you really want to make an organization better and the people around you, there's nothing wrong with failure. It is a fantastic motivator. It is a great driver for innovation. So that's my personal leadership style. Don't be afraid to fail. Keep pushing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh is a more as a doctor rather in the emergency room every day. My Fred, you're on the front lines of healthcare every day, and if you turn on the news, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, healthcare is a highly debatable topic in Washington today, and I'm coming to you this morning from Canada, Josh, Windsor, right outside of Detroit, and it's fascinating to me to watch the difference in healthcare quality and both speed and long. Here in Canada, as you know, healthcare is free, but it's very slow, as opposed to the States where people aren't always guaranteed free health care. So I'm curious to ask you, whether you think healthcare is broken, and what sort of help or assistance do you want to see from people who can actually, put a dent to this problem and give more people the health care they deserve, my friend? What are your thoughts on the state of the American healthcare system, my friend?
So I have a very unique perspective in that I've actually worked overseas in foreign healthcare systems as well in socialized medicine. So in Australia and New Zealand. So I'm actually board certified in Australasia and still do some work out there from time to time, do some locums work just to kind of, just to keep up on the system. And you see with socialized healthcare, that sell to people, we're like, oh, everybody has access to care. But what people kind of fail to recognize, unless you've actually worked in those systems, is anytime you get federal involvement in anything, uh, they lose the plot completely. So when you talk about slow, I mean, they might have access to care, but it might not be the greatest health care. And in some instances, it really sucks. So I'll give like one example. When you take someone with abdominal pain, so you take like a 40-year-old female who has some right upper quadrant pain, gallbladder, super easy all day long. Generally, when you get into socialized healthcare systems, it takes something that simple and just turns it into a nightmare for someone. So, one of the first right upper quadrant pains I saw in Australia, I saw a woman who had been there in her third visit, talked to a colleague and said, hey, this lady says she's waiting for 3 years to get her gallbladder taken out. He's like, yeah, and that's kind of how it works. But then that exact same patient, if they have a private healthcare policy, like they have a little card, they show that to the surgeon, the exact same hospital, the exact same surgeon gets taken out the next day. So there's always this hierarchy in the healthcare system. So even if you have socialized healthcare, you're waiting forever. Even some of the outcomes and things that I saw would just never fly in the United States. Now, on the flip side of that, in the US, you have a lot of people that are uninsured. And that's something that I take a huge amount of pride in as an emergency doctor. I see everybody. I don't care whether you have insurance or not. I am there. We'll do whatever it takes to make sure you get the health care that you need. But then where do they go after that is kind of the question. So I think both healthcare systems have problems. In the United States, I've seen things go from, so I started med school in 1999. It makes me sound kind of old. But in the more government involvement that we've had in our healthcare system, the worse things get. I used to sit down and talk with people about 75% of the time and talk with patients, interactions, and then fill out some orders, a paper chart. Now with the electronic healthcare and all of the rules and things that CMS, Medicare, Medicaid has put in place, I spend 80% of my time behind a computer clicking buttons. You know, it's changed things completely and not for the better. So, there's a lot of problems with healthcare in both places. It's a very complex issue, but yeah, I've got a very unique perspective. I have seen both.
Yeah, that's a subject we could probably do 2 more hours on, but
Oh,
also,
yeah, that's very complex. You could do entire shows on that.
yeah, absolutely. And, from a political perspective, just politically speaking, because I know that you have sort of your eyes on everything from a societal perspective in the U.S., and I know that you've traveled internationally, and I'm curious to ask you about just overall, regardless of the president in power, what do you think American politics is broken in terms of solving actual problems for actual people instead of always looking for an ideological sort of lens to view problems? Because originally I thought public office and running for public office was about serving people. And, as we go further down the road here, I think politics in general, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, is becoming so ideologically sort of territorial that I think we've lost sort of the ball in the chain on why you get into politics in the first place. And I'm wondering your thoughts on that matter as well.
So, a majority of people forget what it's like to be everywhere else on planet Earth. So, America is incredibly blessed. When you look at like some Western civilization, you look, Canada, United States, Europe, the issues that concern you, the things that you have to worry about, are so ridiculous compared to everywhere else on planet Earth. 90% of the planet is worried about putting food on the table for their family, trying to find clean water, trying to make sure that your wife and family aren't going to be raped and murdered tonight. To put it perfectly blunt, but the things that I've seen in Africa, Central Africa, what I've seen in the Middle East, just a lot of death and carnage and destruction. Americans just have lost the plot. There's it's sort of one side of things. They just forget what we are as a people and what separates us and kind of makes us special. And we should be focusing on developing our kids and our next generation of leaders and education. And, things have really got lost here when you talk about how tribal things have become. Everything has to be spun to one side or the other. And they really forget what the goal is. And so somebody's got to do that at some point and bring this country back together and focused and move it forward. That's something I hope to be a part of, and we're going to see if we're successful with that. But, we're very, very blessed, and people just forget that completely and worry about some ridiculous things.
Yeah, and Josh, to that point, I know that you're a children's author, and I'm curious through the books that you write, how are you hoping to provide children with the aspirations to sort of create their own sense of purpose, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, we're super excited about that. So I've got hopefully it kind of shows up on camera here, but you can see this is the first book right here, The Heart of a Leader. And this is part of the Be the Weight series. It really is a spinoff from Be the Weight Behind the Spear. But when you ask yourself, like, how do you teach a 5 to 9 year old kid about leadership and accountability and integrity? Well, we're doing it right here. So this is the first book, The Heart of a Leader. We were able to team with a world-class Disney illustrator, Joe Yakovetic, and we've done a great job. It's already won a few awards. I think this one has got I don't have the sticker on this one. So we've got the Gold Seal from the Mom's Choice Awards. We've won a couple of other awards as well. So we're super excited about that. We're working on book number 2 right now. So this is going to be part of an 8-book series. But when you put things in just terms, great illustrations, because that's where you get the kids started, right? I loved the Mercer Meyer books growing up, the little critters. Did you read any of those? Or were you familiar with the Mercer Meyer books growing up?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so he always had, there was, the little spider that was kind of in the page. So we've got, if you can see on here, there's our little squirrel. And our little squirrel is always in there causing a little bit of mischief. You got to find them on each of the pages, but you get them young. and you start reading at 3, 4, 5 years old, they may not understand the whole concept of integrity, but they hear what you're saying. And they do understand that. If you start that young, like as they get older, I mean, that becomes part of who they are. Integrity, accountability, those leadership skills. So it's where we're really excited about that. As a military commander, I'm going to tell you, if you wait until they're 20 years old to try to teach these skills, it is really, really hard. There's a lot of yelling. There's a lot of push-ups. It's not anywhere near as much fun as when you do it with a fun children's book at like 4 or 5 years old. So it's going very well, and we're super excited about that.
Yeah, and Josh, I've got two questions left for you. And the first of those two questions is this. I'm wondering if you had a parting message for organizational leaders about really treating their people with both dignity, respect, and really returning the aspirational style of leadership, which really sort of gives them their own sense of, motivation to keep moving in that right direction. Because sometimes when you're a leader, you're faced with constantly making decisions without enjoying the ride along the way. And the people that you're in charge of sort of steering, my friend. So what are your thoughts on returning leaders to that aspirational sort of style of leadership that motivates them to get out of bed, not only to go through the motions, but to invest in the style of leadership that they aspire to? What are your thoughts there?
So people can pick up on whether you're genuine or not. So every leadership position is going to be a little bit different. Every organization, whether it's education or some other corporate marketing or sales. I mean, everyone has different kind of targets and goals, and that's what makes your organization unique. But everyone can pick up whether you're genuine or not. If you're there just gaslighting and just like pushing for numbers and sacrificing your people, I've seen plenty of that. I think, just getting back to your earlier point there, where sometimes you don't really have that time to reflect until afterwards. So I finished my command tour in June of this year. And when I look back on the things that we accomplished as a team, it takes so much pride in that. And I saw what was successful. I saw what wasn't successful. I think my next command tour, I'm eligible for retirement now. I don't feel like I'm old enough to retire yet, but I think I'll probably get another command opportunity here. I'm doing emergency management up in Washington, D.C. right now, but I'll probably get another command opportunity, and I'll probably enjoy that one, and we'll take time to smell the roses a little bit more. Things were just so busy and hectic and chaotic in the almost 3-year command tour. I walked into a place that had a lot of problems, and that's exactly what I wanted because I love challenges, but it was incredibly busy, and people can tell when you're genuine or not. So, you have to be passionate and believe in what you're doing. If you're not, then you didn't make a right choice there, and find something that you are passionate about. So people can tell when you're genuine.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, my final question for you is a two-part question because I know that you all also are very passionate about protecting the mental health of physicians because, as you noted earlier, they see the worst of the worst and the best from a medical perspective. So I'm curious to ask you about your own personal and professional legacy, but I'm also curious to ask you about your parting message to doctors and sort of making sure that they maintain their own level of resilience through the work that they do. So you can take that two-part question and direct in your life, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talked about everybody has a breaking point, you know, physicians, they're healers. Most of us go in it for the right reason. Sometimes you see people who just their mommies and daddies were doctors and they thought they were getting a lot of money, and really see them struggle. Like if you don't go into it just knowing it's going to be a complete disaster and a horrific like decade or more of your life and training, it's kind of hard for you. So you see those. I do see plenty of those people, but when you go for the right reasons, I mean, you're a healer, you care. It's really hard when you can't save someone. So, especially in the emergency department, I mean, gosh, hundreds, thousands of codes that I've worked in my life, and there's some that you just can't save, and that's really hard to deal with when you sit down and you talk with those families and you sit down and you cry with them, especially with kids. Man, that just rips your heart out. It's hard to deal with. So you need to find something that resiliency that keeps you going, and that's where I talk about that. Be the weight behind the spear. Find that weight behind your spear, your friends, your colleagues, your family. Like there's a mentor that you had like in college or in medical school or in residency or something. Don't let those relationships go by. You see many physicians, they just neglect themselves in those relationships because it's work, 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 work. But you have to maintain those relationships because you're going to need that weight behind your spear. That'll help you down the road with, if you have your own mental health struggles. Certainly coming back from Iraq was really, really hard for me. That was a brutal transition. And my wife was a huge part of that, Elsa. So she said, you know what? Screw it. Let's move to New Zealand and relax. I played soccer at Rotorua United and worked a little emergency department in Rotorua. And just learned to really enjoy life. All the death and destruction that I had saw kind of gave that perspective again. And, keeps me motivated and doing what I'm doing. So you have to develop those people around you, that weight behind your spear, and maintain those relationships. They are very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, just before I wish you would do, my friend, I want to know if people want to get connected with you. What's the best way they can do that, my friend?
Yeah, thank you. If you go to weightbehindthespear.com, WEIGHT, weightbehindthespear.com. We're on Instagram, Josh McConkey, MD, on TikTok as well, Spear Foundation. And, please follow. Life is a team sport. After you take one takeaway from this, life is a team sport. So, be there for the people around you and then make sure you develop that weight behind your spear as well.
Absolutely. Well, Josh, I want to thank you for the courageous work that you've done in the field of medicine and providing the next generation with a real clear path to effective leadership and creating their own sense of identity. My friend, your work in the space is most appreciated, as is your willingness to engage in conversation with me this morning. It's most appreciated.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks for what you're doing as well. Just getting these messages out there. No, appreciate it.